For those of you guys who've been watching my videos for a while, you'll see that I'm using new mics for the first time in a very, very long time. Now that's a long story that I'll maybe explain one day why I switched, but I think what is absolutely ridiculously apparent is the difference in sound quality. And so it doesn't take much to compare the sound of the previous videos with the sound of the new videos. So as you can see, I'm using Audix mics for the first time. You've heard them, hopefully, by the time you watch this video, so you know what they sound like. I'll just start with the kick, with the legendary, tried and tested Audix D6. It's probably the least amount that I've ever EQ'd a mic on any drum. You just put it into the kick, and it pretty much sounds amazing right off the bat. So the D6 really is a legendary mic, and I never really knew why until I tried the mic myself. It sounds amazing. Then the snares, I use 4 Audix i5s. I use the same configuration on both of the snares, so I do an i5 on the top and an i5 on the bottom. Main snare is usually tuned a little bit lower, a bit meatier, a bit fatter than the side snare, and I tune the side snare really high, usually a very short note, very punchy, very articulate like I said, and I like a big contrast between the main snare and the secondary snare. And the i5s, I feel like does an amazing job at getting the range that goes from the beefy main snare to the much more articulate side snare. Onto the toms, I use 3 micro D mics on all 3 rack toms. So these are clip-on mics, they clip onto the rim. They sound amazing, they're very punchy, which is exactly what I want for the rack toms. I don't have huge rack toms, I do a 8, 10, 12 on the top. They are medium tuning, they're not tuned super low, which kind of made my job interesting in terms of getting the articulation, especially with coated heads versus clear heads, but they sound so good. Very, very small footprint, as you can see. You can barely see them on the angles, whereas my previous mics and lots of other mics that I've used, the footprint makes them kind of unsightly on camera. And so because video is a huge component to these covers, obviously it was really nice that they had such a small footprint. And they still have an amazing frequency response, even though the capsules are that small. And so they were an absolute dream to work with. They sound great. Floor tom, D4, beast of a mic. In terms of tuning, I tune the floor tom as low as it can go before it sounds like a piece of cardboard, and I tune the high tom as pretty much high as it can go without sounding like a timbale drum. So I really like a big spread, and that means that a really low floor tom is sometimes kind of difficult to capture in terms of the beef and the bottom end. The D4 does an amazing job at this. This is the first time that I've used the D4 on the floor tom, and the same rules that apply to the D6 apply to the D4. So little EQ. It just captures the bottom end so well while still being really articulate. There's no bottom mic on the floor tom. Some guys like to put maybe like a D6 or like a kick mic on the bottom of the floor tom to get even more beef, but I felt that was unnecessary with the D4. It just captures the whole frequency range really truthfully. That is a beast of a mic. That's one of my favorites on the whole kit, is the Audix D4 on the floor tom. Then onto the overheads. These two are, I don't want to be cheesy, but they're the, is there a metaphor for something that's gold? The golden boys? The trophies? I don't know. There's a good metaphor in there somewhere. I just couldn't think of it. But they're gold visually and they're gold audibly. Huh? Oh, that was bad. I used the two SCX 25As on the overheads. They sound amazing. They look amazing. And it sucks that you don't get to see them as much on camera, but they sound incredible. They're very transparent. They're extremely flat, which means that you get a very truthful representation. The mics aren't making the kit sound better. It's making the kit sound exactly like it does in the room. And so if you want to make it a bit duller, if you want to make it a bit brighter, you can, but the mics aren't lying to you. And I think that rule of thumb goes for all the mics, all these Audix mics, much more so than any other mics that I've ever worked with before. They give a very truthful representation of what you're hearing. I can't wait to use them for vocals. I can't wait to use them for acoustic guitar. They've got such a truthful frequency response that I just think they would be great for, just as a standard large diaphragm condenser mic. They're great. Onto the auxiliary mics. I use 3 auxiliary mics, one underneath the hats, kind of getting the hats and the low stack, another in the middle of the kit getting the high stack and the splash, and then another one right under the bell of the ride. And all 3 mics are exactly the same. They're all an 80X51. Very, very clear and articulate, which is exactly what I want. When I use auxiliary mics, it's never really a matter of volume as much as it is articulation. So I would EQ these 3 to just gently blend them into the mix, just to articulate the things that I feel like need articulation, especially in the context of mixing drum covers, where I'm, like I said, already contending with existing drums. And so these have to be especially articulate, especially loud and piercing. And so I feel like miking the ride, miking the stacks definitely, and the splashes and the hats just gives me a little bit more control. And it takes a very subtle blend in the mix to make these 3 areas of the kit pop just a little bit more. So yeah, I love these. Then lastly, I use 2 CX212Bs as room mics. Now, this room is entirely dry, like I said in the previous video. And you guys know that usually, in terms of what I can afford and where I work, the only rooms that I have access to most of the time are very dry rooms that are not always set up for recording. And so I do the best that I can with what I have access to, and usually what I have access to is entirely dry rooms. I think a lot of guys would say that it's a waste of time and it's a waste of a good mic to use these amazing room mics in a completely dry room. But usually what I do is I just position them the same distance from the snare, from the center of the snare, and then I pan them far right and far left. And then I just use a little bit of reverb on those. I use the same amount of reverb on the overheads, and then just a touch of reverb on the close mics on the snares, but blending it very subtly just to make it sound a little bit more alive, like the kit's actually breathing. I can't wait to use these in an actual huge, gorgeous sounding room. But even in this interesting scenario where I'm supplementing with reverb, they sound beautiful. Cool, so those are the Audix mics that I used. I really, really enjoyed working with these. And you guys know my stance on sponsorships. You know my stance on the products that I work with. I would never vouch for a product that I didn't try myself. I would never vouch for a product that I didn't believe in. And I would never vouch for a product where I don't feel like the value in terms of cost and the way that it sounds is fair. And I'm not gonna give you a big spiel and try to sell you on Audix mics. The only thing I'm gonna say is just listen to the video. Listen to the video and know that I spent much less time on the post-production than I did in the past. If you can, definitely check out these Audix mics, they're amazing. Check out their website. And as always, such a huge thank you to Audix for helping me with these mics and giving me support and replying to all my emails and helping me with the settings and mic placement and all that stuff. They're really amazing with that. So Lofty at Audix, Cliff at Audix, you guys are amazing. I appreciate the support so much and I can't wait to keep working with you. So yeah, check out these mics, they're incredible. Cheers.